I think when a woman owns her pleasure, she often stops apologizing for her desires and starts to live from a place of worth. So if you are feeling stagnant in your life, if you're not feeling creative, like there's nothing that you're really doing that feels alive in creativeness, which I believe we all know what it feels like when we feel inspired to create something. It could be a cake, it can be a piece of artwork, it can be a really cool spreadsheet. Like I know people who get turned on by their spreadsheets.
You're speaking to me.
And I'm like, I actually get it. I'm like, oh, that spreadsheet is sexy. I understand it, right? But that desire to create, and from a physiological standpoint, it's actually feeling your your physical turn on. Like, are you feeling aroused by life? Doesn't necessarily have to be another person, or even just like, is your body feeling that arousal within? And if you're not feeling those things or seeing those things show up in your life, you're probably shut down. And there's not the prana, the energy that is life, the reiki. It's not flowing through you, and more than likely, there's going to be blocks that show up in other areas of your life. And one of those significant blocks can be within your space of financial abundance, or knowing what to do if you have financial abundance. You might have some stuck points around what to do with that pool of money that might be in your accounts already.
Welcome to Always and Never About the Money. Are you ready to embark on a journey that will forever change the way you perceive money? Well, get ready because we're about to dive deep into the fascinating world of finances and human behavior. I'm your host, Chelsea Williams and Money Whisperer. I'm here to help you realize what your money story is telling you and how you can change it. But hold on tight, because this is not the dull black and white talk about money. We're going to splash all the color into this typical nap-inducing conversation. On Always and Never About the Money, we're going to explore the intricate relationship between money and our daily lives. From the impact history has left on us and how we still manage it, how your habits shape your money, and what beliefs are driving your habits, choices, and relationships, to the deeper values and emotions we've come to attach to it. We're going to unravel it all. Through insightful conversation and personal anecdotes, we'll bring you the expert insights, real-life stories, and meaningful, thought-provoking ideas that will inspire you, educate you, and initiate some serious perspective change when it comes to your money. Remember, money is just a tool. Together, we'll untangle the web of emotions, beliefs, and values we've come to attach to it and find a new perspective on how it can enhance our lives. So whether you're looking for motivation, practical advice, or a good laugh, Always and Never About the Money's got you covered. Thank you for joining us in this transformative journey. Get ready to challenge your beliefs and embark on a financial exploration like no other. Without further ado, let's kick off the episode of Always and Never About the Money. Welcome back to Always and Never About Money, the podcast that shows you how money is way more than numbers. It's your story, your energy, and your mirror. And today's episode is going to show you just how much everything that doesn't seem related to your money actually probably is. Before we dive in, a quick note. This episode does contain adult themes, including discussions about sexuality and power dynamics that are not appropriate for children. It also touches on topics related to abuse and trauma that may be triggering for some listeners. Please take care of yourself as you listen. Now, let me ask you something. Bet you didn't know that one of the ways to unblock your money might be through unblocking your sex life. Today's conversation is all about the connection between your body and your bank account and what happens when you reclaim your pleasure as a form of power and prosperity. I'm joined by the brilliant and bold Cynthia Cramblett today. Cynthia helps women reconnect to their bodies, their desire, and their sovereignty. And she's here to show us how that work ties directly to money. In this episode, we explore the body-money connection and why sensation matters, how pleasure can be a teacher for prosperity, why shame, especially around sexuality, can block abundance, and how shadow work and ethical power dynamics can actually rewrite your financial story. If you're ready to challenge everything you've been taught about success, leadership, and what you are allowed to receive, This episode is for you. All right, cool. Well, let's dig in because you can budget all day, but if you still can't receive without guilt, you're going to block the bag.
Mhm.
And this episode is about money, yes, but it's also about sex, power, shadow work, and how pleasure can teach us everything we need to know about prosperity. So, not your average money talk, and that's exactly the point. So, with me today, I have Cynthia Cramblett, host of Her Drive podcast, and whose purpose and impact is found in her work, where she helps people reconnect to their bodies, reclaim their power, and redefine what it means to live and earn on their own terms. So, I met you, about a week ago
Yeah.
when I was on your podcast, and immediately I was like, I need you to be a guest on my podcast as well. So, welcome to our space, Cynthia.
Thank you, Chelsea. It's really fun to see how relationships can blossom really fast and the cross-pollination that occurs when our hearts are open and we're willing to receive the medicine of others.
Yeah, I agree. And what I really love about what you do and having you on our podcast as a guest is that you wouldn't think that these things, like your immediate reaction is not like, oh, let's talk about money through all of these things, right? But I think that's a really good place to kind of kick off the conversation is what does it mean to reconnect with our body's pleasure and self-worth? And how do we know if we're not connected?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, I feel like we're diving right in here. Um, I think when a woman owns her pleasure, she often stops apologizing for her desires and starts to live from a place of worth. So if you are feeling stagnant in your life, if you're not feeling creative, like there's nothing that you're really doing that feels alive in creativeness, which I believe we all know what it feels like when we feel inspired to create something. It could be a cake, it can be a piece of artwork, it can be a really cool spreadsheet. Like I know people who get turned on by their spreadsheets.
You're speaking to me.
And I'm like, I actually get it. I'm like, oh, that spreadsheet is sexy. I understand it, right? But that desire to create, and from a physiological standpoint, it's actually feeling your your physical turn on. Like, are you feeling aroused by life? Doesn't necessarily have to be another person, or even just like, is your body feeling that arousal within? And if you're not feeling those things or seeing those things show up in your life, you're probably shut down. And there's not the prana, the energy that is life, the reiki. It's not flowing through you, and more than likely, there's going to be blocks that show up in other areas of your life. And one of those significant blocks can be within your space of financial abundance or knowing what to do if you have financial abundance. You might have some stuck points around what to do with that pool of money that might be in your accounts already.
I appreciate how you added in there, even if you do have money, because I think there's a common misconception out there that when people have money, there's this like amazingness that comes with life. But it's really important to know and very true that just because some people have money does not mean that they're living in peace or that they are connected to themselves through the money. So, in all of these things, how do you show up and help people with the connections?
Yeah, so I work predominantly in three silos and they all synthesize together. So focusing on sexuality, somatics, and spirituality. So depending on how a person presents themselves initially, that then determines the process to which we go. But because we're focusing predominantly on sexuality here, um, if someone comes in and they're blocked and they have a hard time feeling their desires, so to speak, especially women, a lot of times we're living in our head, right? And we're not living in an embodiment of self. And what embodiment means is you're actually able to recognize signals that are coming from your body. And through those signals of emotion and physical sensation, you then have your brain serving those components and filtering out what the body is trying and emotions are trying to say, so you're more resourced. And most of the time we're living from our heads, and that creates a lot of neurotic thoughts, spinning thoughts, like we're overthinking things. So if you can move into and a lot of times through somatic experience, which soma is the body, like into embodied experiences through certain practices, you start to build awareness around what your body is trying to tell you. And once I started really moving out of intellectualizing everything and living from an embodied, like listening to what the sensations were, I started to notice really quickly what is being said to me, and my decision making very quickly. I was able to make decisions more quickly and trust what the decision should be. And one of those sensations that I would intellectualize for a while is people would say, well, you need to make decisions from your womb, you're a woman, or make decisions from your pussy, your yoni will tell you what the truth is. And because I was so I'll kind of go on a sidebar here, personal anecdote. I've always been a sexual person and like loved pleasure, and I've never had problems with orgasm or anything like that. But that being said, I did have some trauma around my yoni and her not trusting me, and that comes from, and a lot of people can relate to this more than likely, of being penetrated too quickly, of letting people touch me there or be sexually active with people who I didn't really want to be engaged with. And my body was saying no, or I was overriding my own system. So, so I still created trauma for myself. So with that, in some ways, even though I could get aroused, I could reach climax very easily and feel good in sexual spaces, I still had this shutdown. So I couldn't feel the yes or no from my womb, or more than likely, I was ignoring it, right? Because I didn't know to pay attention to those sensations that were coming from this sacred part of my body. So once I started to wash away some of that practice of intellectualizing everything, intellectualizing my emotions, intellectualizing sensation, and actually just listen to what they were saying directly, I, yeah, all those answers were coming much more quickly. So I stopped just understanding what they meant by living from this embodied womb space and pussy portal telling you. And now I feel it all the time. Like I'll feel flaming sensations, or like a tingle will move from the root of my spine and move through my hips. And all of these sensations are specific to me and the answers that my body is giving me in the moment. And so the goal in working with women specifically is helping them to move into that embodied state. And it doesn't necessarily have to focus on what their yoni is telling them, but it's really just mapping any physical sensation within the body and but what we have to do before that most of the time is remove blocks and help regulate the nervous system so we can actually pay attention without being the circuit breakers popping because too many things are being triggered at once.
So the whole time you're talking, my money brain is like, this, while it seems a topic completely unrelated to money, is absolutely related.
Mm-hmm.
The goal of abundance, and specifically in the environment you work in, which is sex and intimacy and embodiment in a physical form and an energetical form, but that same sense of abundance is what people really yearn for when it comes to their money. And a few things that you said that I think people can relate to in this way as well is the mistrust, like that beginning mistrust.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Women statistically experience trauma and in many different forms, and abuse in many different forms. And I mean, I was that woman too. I had been through so much that I no longer trusted myself.
Mm-hmm.
There was a complete disconnect between, what I felt I needed to do versus what had worked and not worked. So I did not trust myself at all. So the idea that if you're sitting in a position where you don't trust yourself, number one. Number two is addressing the trauma that is there And then the third is because this is true with money as well, because I know, and this conversation is going to help our listeners understand that money is energy.
Hmm.
And a block in your money, a problem in your money, it's actually not a problem in your money. It's a problem coming through your money, and it's probably showing up in other areas of life.
Right.
So, you teaching people to actually listen to the physical response of a decision. And even when that comes to money, when if whether you somebody asks you to borrow money or lend them money, or you're spending money on this thing and you know it's probably your budget's not going to agree, just that physical response and knowing around it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and when women are deeply rooted, finally can moving into their pelvis or breathing from their belly and able to like erotically map their, or even not, it doesn't even have to be erotic, like map your pleasure on your body, like, and you come alive into that beingness, more creative ideas just flow. It's like oozeful honey starts to come through. And I have found that women are being able to be more decisive and less second guessing, to your point, and trusting of themselves, and ultimately become more radiant. And we've all seen these people, right? And many of us are these people at a lot of, maybe a lot of times in our lives. Um, we see them as like this glowing light, or we feel like there's this giant light shining out of us, or people will say like, wow, you're just like glowing today, right? And it's not performative. It's actually the abundance of what I believe is God's source energy flowing through us and exuding outwards, and that creates magnetism. And with that, like erotic aliveness, like creative energy, which is what sexual energy is. It's creation energy. It pulls in opportunities and lovers if you're wanting that, and clients, and literally miracles towards us women, with a whole a lot less effort and way more ease than if we're trying to like white knuckle our way through life and intellectualize everything, or you know, approach things in a way that don't really fit the feminine model. Um, and to your point, like the way we do one thing is probably how we do most things. I find to be really true. So these things are really synced up. And as women start to remove, I think shame might be a topic we could go into, but shame chokes, how do I say this? It chokes wallets and wombs collectively. And we know the feminine has been controlled quite significantly through the damning power of shame. And that's something that a lot of us have. I believe around our financial state or finances, whether we have money or we do not, or we're in the mix somewhere in between. And then a lot of people have societal shame around their sexuality too. And as you liberate one or the other, they just feed into each other. And, you know, women feeling guilty for wanting more sex, more orgasms, more zeros in their bank account has been traditionally seen as unattractive, or like money grabbing, or like people
Gold
call it
digging,
gold
yeah.
digging. Exactly, you read my mind. Whereas in reality, and that's something I've had to grapple with and continue to as I continue to liberate myself, is there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to be someone with abundance. And to me, it's the choice of what do you do with your abundance. And for me, it's like I have a huge heart, and the more that I have, the more I can create magic for other people, the more I can give, the more I can support and be even more empowered in my feminine essence. And that's what I hope for absolutely every single woman on the planet.
Yes. And yeah, let's go into that. The journey of shame. What does
Hmm.
that look like? What can we run into? How can we work through that?
Yeah. Well, shame can be, it's typically societally created, right? But based on how we're going to be perceived by others, or what we've been said to as a small child, right? We all get these little imprints of shame at a young age. And you don't really know that that's what it is until you start to go out, and there's little things that you might start, for a lot of people, they hide the things that they're ashamed of, or it's been modeled to hide these things, like sweep it under the rug. So for those who are listening to this, a way to identify shame really easily is like, how comfortable are you talking to people about this? And the way to measure it is the fewer people or the zero people that you're willing to talk to about that particular subject, behavior, choice, patterning, desire. Um, that is like kind of the scale for like how great that shame for that particular thing lives within your system. And those of us who have done a lot of work to release shame, or some people don't carry it, um, they are able to have non-resistance, just like easeful, calm, collected conversations about these topics. And once you can work through your same shame and integrate it, you do feel calm. And it's not as if you're jumping back into the story and the behavior or in the energy around it. You're just, it's like you're talking about a movie that occurred, right? This was just a happening, and you have a non-emotional attachment to whatever it may be that's causing you shame.
As opposed to like falling into that feeling all over again, almost
Right.
experiencing it again.
Yeah, which is a shame spiral,
Mm.
right? So, and that's another great point around, the shame hasn't been fully integrated. If yourself or someone else can say something to you and it causes you to spiral downwards, right?
Mm.
Like, oh no, I'm here. And you can literally feel yourself going darker, deeper and darker into this hole. And it's okay if that happens. We all have shame. Um, but it takes bravery to first look at yourself, acknowledge the reality of the situation. And I have carried a lot of shame in my life. A lot of it, I grew up a lot hearing shame on you. You should be ashamed of yourself. Like shame, shame, shame was like confetti being thrown around. It's definitely told to be ashamed of being a sexually expressed, attractive woman. A lot of times, bullied for it. Parental things said to me, um, and and then also shame around money of like you should just have enough. But then people who have money are greedy. And I grew up in this narrative of like confusion, like on this side of the family, a lot of wealth and abundance, but a lot of infighting, and people didn't like each other and they didn't get along, and all they cared about was money. And then the opposite side was just like humble farmers, very kind, had good relationships and connections, but money was seen as evil.
Mhm.
And for me, growing up in that thing where it's like I look at the comparison between like sex. Sex is something necessary for procreation and having babies, but you shouldn't dare talk about the pleasures and the joy of all of that. And certainly don't show anyone that you have that type of enjoyment. And then I feel like the same goes for money on the one hand of the family, where it was like it's okay to have money, but just have enough so that you can't become evil and manipulate and control. And there was a lot of shame for both of that. So as I've healed myself from the sexual traumas and liberations, I've then been able to say, you know what? It's totally okay for me to desire more, to want more, and to be free. And that's why shame work and like moving through the nervous system, it's not all, but a lot of it's nervous system challenges. Like as you move through that, you build your energetic and nervous system capacity to hold more. And I had this beautiful realization last week. I was sitting outside and I was like staring at my tree outside. And I was like, wow, I'm getting everything that I want in my life. But there's no way a year ago my nervous system could have handled all of this. I would have self sabotaged something, right? So if you're listening and you're praying for change and praying for your dreams to come true, recognize they're going to be happening incrementally as you continue to heal and release shame, release limiting beliefs, and as your nervous system's capacity expands as well.
And so is this where shadow work comes into play?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And
And for
shadow
the
work
people
is,
that aren't familiar with that, give us
yeah.
an idea of what that is.
Yeah. So, the simplest way for me to define it is shadow work is looking at the things that are Some might define as darker behaviors, darker thoughts, things that you run from rather than want to like turn and look at. So like your bubbly, happy, cheery self, you might really love, right? And the good girl, we'll go there, the good girl archetype, right? Whereas there might be this side of you that really loves, I don't know, erotic dancing, like yourself, right? And there could be shame wrapped around why you have pleasure in enjoying that and expressing that. Other shadow behaviors could be like your anger or dark thoughts of desire of actions you'd like to say. And there's a whole scope of it. And usually shadow work is defined as like dealing with your demons, slaying your dragon. Um, I personally believe that shadow work and pain are the portals to greatest healing and momentum, which then allows us to be in our celebration, in our play, and then look back when things or look at things when they're more sticky or darker as they come up and understand they're not so serious. So my approach to shadow work is not we're not slaying anything. We're actually befriending these parts of ourselves. And in my spiritual work and in my coaching, I'm teaching people many times how to actually stop. Well, what we do is many times the practice is like, what is this thing that's plaguing you? Okay, I want you to run. Envision it and then just run from it. And then we go through this whole practice of like, what happens when you run from it? And many times it stays stuck to the person, it just gets bigger. And the practice is like, okay, stop. Now turn around and look at it. And a lot of times, and it's like, I don't want to look around. Like you're like physically, I can't move my body. Like I don't want to look. And this is an energetic explanation of what's being seen in the mind's eye. But as people grow stronger and more confident to turn and look at the shadowy aspect, most of the time what they find is it is just a part of themselves, whether it's we'll say in their timeline of this life, like say like an 11-year-old them who has been trying to get the attention of the adult self because there's something that needs to be identified and it makes itself really big and scary and like whatever it needs to do in order to get the attention. It didn't know any other way because most of the time the softer ways didn't work. And I think a lot of times women can identify with this, like you're trying to talk to someone about a boundary and they don't hear you when you say it softly. And then you get a little louder and a little more direct and a little bit bigger and then a little bit bigger. And then finally you have to like roar at them. And that's when people are like, oh my God, you're crazy. So we're kind of treating our shadows like that. Like, oh my God, you're crazy. I got to get away from you.
I know every woman can relate in this moment.
Yeah, like how many women have been like lost their shit, but I'm like, you didn't hear me the 15 times before I tried to tell you like softly.
Right. Hello. I asked nicely.
Exactly.
No, I love that. And I can't agree more with you that I believe through my experience and through what I hear from other people, the best thing we can do is embrace it as part of us. It's not, shoving it down, it's going to pop up involuntarily at some point. It doesn't just get swept up under the rug. And even just facing it and standing there looking at it isn't enough either. Like when we can fully accept the things and all parts of us, it really puts us in this position where, like you say, it's not performative, it's truly authentic. And I think one of the coolest things you can do is to address your shadow side and embrace it because so many opportunities open up to you and so many new things. And like you said, creativity open up to you. And to put the ball back in your world, what that means for you and the people that you work with is ethical kink.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
So tell us more about that in terms of like the transformation that you see from someone who comes with that shame and really needing to go through that work, and then what the purpose of it is, what the safety in it is.
Sure, sure. Well, thank you. I love this segue. So this might be a little bit jarring for people to hear, but first I want to start with what the difference is between a kink and a fetish, because those who are not within that community and container of understanding, this might help them differentiate. So a fetish is something that a person absolutely needs to have during what was considered sexual play in order to reach climax, whatever that looks like for them, like ultimate level of pleasure. Whereas a kink is like a preference and an area of like exploration. And kink is, I would say, a bit more broad in a sense, whereas a fetish is typically like, I need this one thing or like three things. And there's a lot of judgment around both kink and fetishes and BDSM, and just that whole like umbrella of alternative non-vanilla type of sex. So after going on that little bit of tangent, it helps me kind of land into what is like the number one desire, which is considered kinky for women. And this is going to be a bit jarring for people, as I mentioned. It is actually the desire of to be consensually raped, right? They have a rape fantasy. And it's usually shocking for people to hear that, especially their men. They're like, why would a woman want fantasize of being raped? And it's because many times we're told that if we want sex, if we desire it, if we want to be sexually open, we get slut shamed. So, and we live in a still a relatively puritanical society. So for women to feel unbridled in their passion and being ravaged, and again, the energy is the same. Like women want to be ravaged, they want to be taken, they want to be like fully desired and engulfed in their lover's passion, right? Rape is very similar energetically. It's just non-consensual. So, this is kind of the side of like the shadow work and kink, where we can work with people who come in and talk about the desires that they have, and how I lead them through understanding their desires and removing the shame is first like celebrating the fact that they know this about themselves. A lot of times people have never been celebrated in their life for these things that they're deeply ashamed of. And self-awareness is something I want to continue to celebrate, because the more that we, give attaboys for being self-aware, the more self-aware a person wants to be. So we then work at like, well, where did this come from? And a lot of times it's a traumatic event that's happened, or just a blueprint that's happened from their childhood, their faith beliefs, right? Someone doesn't have to have a rape fantasy and have like a crazy hardcore trauma, like a big T trauma, right? So I want to break away that misconception that just because someone's in the kink world, that they had some sort of trauma that they're trying to psychologically move their way through and give themselves domicile over. That being said, kink is very helpful for people regaining their sense of power when they've had a traumatic experience occur. So it can be a healing modality and a playful expression for both. It just depends on where the person is coming from. And what all of this does is it puts sovereignty into that person and like self-confidence. And again, I'll mention it that goes back into other aspects of life. And that being said, a person who is well pleasured, they are going to be glowing and succeeding and expanding in other too. Like we all know what it looks like when someone's really happy, especially like a well fucked woman. There's a glow about her, whether it's from her own self pleasure and exploration, or it's from enjoyment of another beloved person.
Hello, this is Samantha from Easy Loan.
Yeah, undeniably. And so while kinks and fetishes are not new to me, I'm sure some listeners are like, oh my gosh, this is a taboo thing, right? Just like we're talking about. But I want this to serve as an example of once you can let go of the social constructs that have been put around you and you're doing things for the right reasons, you get a completely different perspective on these types of topics. So the first time that I was truly kind of brought on to this whole world of kink and fetish and BDSM,
Mhm.
yes,
Mhm.
was through a book. I believe it's by Marissa Peer. Are you familiar with Marissa Peer?
I don't think so.
What this book did for me was it really changed my perspective on the topics because it is seen as taboo to most people. But once you drop that assumption and you actually open your mind up to why people are interested in these things and how you can do it in a healthy container, it like I said, it really unlocks this whole new world of potential that it's okay to
Mhm.
play
Mhm.
and experiment with some of these things.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's really powerful. And a lot of this mirrors finance from a sense of, we're only ever purchasing a feeling. And so when I work with people and they kind of deviate from the plan, there's always a core value if we dig deep enough into it, right? And so where this comes into play is in earning potential,
Mhm.
right? When a woman has fully embraced herself and she's confident and she's willing to go outside of the box and color outside of the lines, that is where we tap into the unlimited piece of money, which is how much we make.
Mhm.
And the same social constructs that we've talked about where women shouldn't have this much money, heck, they shouldn't even be part of the conversation. I
Mhm.
don't even talk about this shit when there's a woman around. There's no point for you to know this. It takes a lot of work to let go of those things, but it's the same kind of liberation, and it's the financial sovereignty, right? Choosing how to earn, spend, and invest in a way that it aligns with your values, not the values people told you to adapt.
Mhm. Exactly.
If this episode hit home and you're realizing your personal money equation is off, whether that's how much you make, keep, spend to save or invest, then I want you to do yourself a favor right now. I'm creating a personal finance program designed to help you rebalance your entire money equation. It's built on a proven framework that gets you grounded in your money right now without shame, spreadsheets, or burnout. I'll help you move past the ick of budgeting and into a system of boundaries that protect your future financial freedom while still giving you freedom within your spending today. If that sounds like what you've been needing, go to our website and join the email list. As soon as the program launches, you'll be the first to know. And trust me, you are going to want to be in the room for this. So, what can consensual power play, which is what we've been talking about, teach us about reclaiming financial autonomy?
Mm, that's a really good question. And I'll start with we're always engaging in power play all the time. Doesn't matter if it's with your dog walker, the barista, your boss, other people you're driving through traffic with. Power play is always in the works. It's just whether or not you are aware of it or not.
That's so powerful.
Yeah. And what I love about BDSM, which if you don't know what the acronyms stand for, I'll kind of break it down. So it's bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, sadism, masochism. And there's a lot of like sub things and branches that go from that trunk of the tree, so to speak. Um, but for the most part, there is what is the dominant, and then there is the submissive energy. Okay. So, where people get a little bit confused is that they believe that the dominant is the one with all the power, and the submissive is just like the weak, has no control, has no sovereignty at all within the setting. And it can be that way if it's done unethically. But those who engage in it ethically actually do all of this conversation before there's any play that even occurs. And then afterwards, there is self care for both of we'll work with, say, two people, the dominant submissive in this case. So there's touch points that are happening, and there's great amounts of care that occur. And I did a really intensive training a few years ago in a dominatrix training, just to deeper understand the space and to elevate myself. Because I had been in an abusive relationship, and Kink was a part of our relationship, but I was always the one playing the submissive. But I knew in my heart of hearts, I also wanted to switch in the dynamic and to feel empowered in leading, and wanted to explore that, right? And this is all going to build on itself. So, what I learned in that training and was that the dominant, who appears to be the leader, is actually in service to the submissive. And it is through the submissive that the dominant gets to actualize into their highest version of self, which is to be in service. So, how that has switched my mindset as far as like what is leadership, what is service, what is play in these different spaces, what does it look like to be sovereign and to surrender into the leadership of someone else? Like, just totally, like, so many different like mind explosions, right? So, what it brought to me is like, what is a true leader? And what does it mean to be resourced? Because a submissive many times is bound, either energetically or physically tied or contained in some way. Um, and the dominant has all this power. And the dominant, who is deeply there to care for the submissive and their desires, has to be ethical and in a space of service. So when I think about people who have power in society, have financial abundance and everything else, they are looked up to and many times worshiped. Like many people, many submissives, like almost like worship the dom in the space because they think they're all high and powerful. But I think there can be leaders who understand the role of financial abundance, of like true leadership, in my opinion, which is heart led. And what they're actually doing is looking at those who may have less, in a sense, or have less power, and they're serving them. They're in service too. And that is what leadership is. So you can go and play in just in this general space. And if anyone wants to go further into this, like, come find me. But there's roles that you can explore within the kink space that actually shine a light on what's happening within society, things that are pretty messed up, and ways in which we can do better in our relationships romantically, in our friendships, in our working dynamics. And it shows how to be in better communication with yourself first, because before you can have those communications around what the scene is going to look like, you have to first know what you truly desire, and you negotiate the scene to some degree. And sometimes the whole scene's built out. Anyway, but then you can communicate with everyone much more clearly and from a sense of embodied groundedness and serve. And then those who want to just surrender can trust that they are giving their trust, their embodied sovereign like freedom into the hands of someone who's actually worthy of it and can hold that trust that they've been given. It's very powerful.
And very well thought out. Like, this is not something that you just go into. It's something that you communicate with. You're going into this incredibly aware of the environment and the people and the expectations and the limitations and the boundaries. So it's, in some ways, it's a pretty controlled experience.
Absolutely. And the greatest thing about it as you become more resourced and understood within the space, and if you are engaging in this activity with people that you trust and you're with regularly, then there becomes this sense of like trust in self, trust in the other, to maybe loosen the reins a little bit and explore edges more. And I think that this can apply to a lot of areas in life. Like, we go and we learn systems and trust processes, like even in like financial systems, what to do with my money, what are the different options here. Oh, that looks interesting. I have the confidence now to go over there and play with this type of investment or whatever have you, and not be so scared, because we've done the work to build the resiliency and the self-trust and know that we can branch out a little bit. And it makes life more exciting and exhilarating and interesting instead of this like drab sameness, you know, boring. Yuck. No, thank you.
And that beautifully captures why I wanted to bring you onto this podcast and why I know that money is a fractal. I work with people and their money, but what I'm really doing is I'm seeing through to the person. And no matter what it is in your life, if it's money, if it's sex and experimentation, if it's a new career, if it's family, if it's relationships, there's this same fundamental journey that I believe really has to be honored
Mm,
to shed what you've been told to believe, to truly embrace all of yourself, to determine now that you are living authentically, what is it that you want out of
mm,
every area of life, and then empowering yourself to go do it, to start the process, and in a healthy, healed way.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So well said. Mm-hmm.
It is. And I think that's the perfect place to cut it, and I'll do my exit because that you summed it up beautifully. Like you totally set me up for it.
Perfect. I love it.
Yes, that was great. I love that we can take the topic of money and weave it into this and like make it make sense.
Yeah.
And I
Wholeheartedly.
mean, I see it. And that's the goal of the podcast. I want people to be able to look at their money, especially if they're not where they want to be, and be able to understand that you are who has to change first.
Yeah.
And whatever's showing up in your money, it's probably showing up elsewhere in your life. I can
Mm-hmm.
almost guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love working with people and money because it's such a technical, inanimate tool, but it's an opportunity to go deeper.
Yeah.
It's almost like the perfect portal into a person and their life and what else they're not happy with. And if we can change your core values and your habits and your beliefs around money, what else can you change in the areas of your life?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
all around liberation. And then likewise with what you do. I believe that people that work with you find this sense of authenticity, empowerment, and full liberation and curiosity and safety to explore whatever they want, that sense can transition into other areas of life.
Absolutely. The aliveness, right? Like we talked about last week. It's the river, right? It's the flow. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's no mistake that a lot of money terms reflect water, cash flow, liquidity, all those things. Surprise. Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me so much. I feel like now we're officially besties. We just
Yeah,
you gotta
absolutely.
be my bestie now. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It was really fun to think about the intersection of these two things. And yeah, I love it. I love it so much.
Woo, friends, if that didn't crack open a new perspective, I don't know what will. Cynthia brought the heat, the softness, and the truth. And I hope you felt it in your body and your bank account. If this episode stirred something in you, if you're ready to explore your own body money connection and move past the blocks that are holding you back, I want to invite you to stay connected with Cynthia. Check out the show notes to figure out how to work with Cynthia and learn more about what it is that she can do. And make sure you're subscribed. Share this episode with a friend who's ready to reclaim both their pleasure and their prosperity. And head to our website to get on the email list. I've got a personal finance program coming soon that picks up exactly where this episode leaves off. And I promise it's going to help you change your money story from the inside out. Until next time, keep listening, keep feeling, and keep rewriting the algorithm. And in case you were wondering, I did look up the book that I talked about that was really the first time I was ever exposed to these different forms of sexual expression. The book is called Mating in Captivity, and it is by Esther Pearl. So if this episode piqued your interest and you want a light foot in to really exploring these types of things, this might be the book for you. If you liked this episode, be sure to show us some love by subscribing and turning on those notifications. You can find me on Instagram under The Money Whisper, and also where we encourage you to contribute, to join the conversation, ask questions, and share your thoughts so we can create more episodes tailored exactly to what you want to know about money. I'm your host and your personal money whisperer. Until next time, remember, it is always and never about the money. Da-da-da! Finito!